everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of the Charter School Connection podcast. Today, I'm with the founder of a charter school known as Inspire Academy, Leslie Draper. How you doing, Leslie?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to get to know you a little bit and learn about your school, what makes it unique. So to start out, I'd love to ask kind of what got you involved in education and why do you like working and running a charter school?
Sure. I got involved in education through working with kids and working with kids who are experiencing poverty and realizing that education is one of the unequal playing fields out there and really wanting to make a difference in that area. As far as getting involved in running an actual school and starting a charter school, I got into charter schools from a grassroots community organizing level. I was working with families in our community who were expressing their felt need of more educational options for their children. And as community members discussed the best path forward for ensuring that the educational needs of all students were met, a charter application became a clear path forward to working to meet those needs.
Okay. So when you were working with youth and kids that were kind of struggling, was that volunteer work? Was that another profession that you did beforehand, or have you always been a teacher?
So it was a combination of different types of work. I did a lot of volunteer work in the community and was teaching private music through an arts organization. I taught both group lessons, group piano lab classes, as well as individual lessons, and worked in the disability arts field a little bit as well. And what I started to realize was that I really wanted to work with students who maybe couldn't pay for my services. And so that's where public education became a reasonable shift for me. I was then doing some academic coaching, partnering with a charter school and virtual brick and mortar hybrid charter school, where we were really supporting kids with academic coaching and making sure on those virtual days they got all the services they needed, coordinating volunteers, writing lesson plans for K-8, and managing that multi-age space. So those were kind of the types of things I was doing beforehand. I also taught at the college level a bit, ran some remediation courses for a local community college as well.
Okay. So how would you say how many years had gone into preparing and working before you actually started the charter school? Just out of curiosity for me.
Sure. It would have been about 13 years.
I would say that's a lot of experience and
It is. It is.
definitely want the kind of time frame that you would need to qualify an individual for a position that you have. I'd like for you to tell me a little bit more about the history of your school and maybe something that makes it a little unique.
Sure. What makes our school unique is our history of being a grassroots community birthed charter school. As a result of this, we are deeply rooted in community and passionate about empowering families and students to lead within the community. Our educational model also makes us unique. We're committed to an inquiry-based approach, and inquiry-based approach is proven to really re-engage students on the margins whose voices may have been kind of silenced through the education process in a traditional setting or a non-inquiry setting, and really brings those voices to the center and re-engages them in the education process.
Okay, so inquiry bases, could you expound on that a little bit? Is it getting feedback
Sure.
from the students, parents, and like addressing like concerns that they are asking about, or?
So certainly that's a piece of inquiry. That's more the feedback level of it. The inquiry-based model for education is really encouraging students to question and to follow the trajectory of those questions. Very little rote education in an inquiry-based model. So we basically have what we do is we guide the kids through a topic using the EL education curriculum or the Bridges in Math Learning curriculum, both of which are very inquiry based, and lead the kids through the questioning process and encourage them to really explore all the questions they have. And through that, they become deeper learners. So they may become a deeper knowledge expert on some standards and topics than others instead of a really broad surface level exposure to everything. We dig pretty deeply and integrate the disciplines so that kids are reading, writing is all based on math and or all based on science and social studies. So topics that engage the real world in an immediate setting.
Gotcha. So it sounds like you have a big emphasis on the why and helping students to understand bigger questions and learning.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kids have to understand the why to really engage in their learning. And we're building them to be citizens that contribute to society and building their community to be stronger. And we want to make sure that they understand that process early and that becomes a part of their why at a young age.
Awesome. And what year was your school founded?
So we were founded in 2013. Thinking of the pathway to the process of opening a school, we applied as a community group around 2011 for the charter, and through the process of getting that facilities piece figured out, which is hard for a lot of charter schools, we were able and ready to get going in August of 2013. And in that interim time is when I knocked out the certification for charter school leadership, the master's degree in education administration, and some of those pieces as well during those early years.
Gotcha. Well, would you say that opening a charter school, was it unnecessarily difficult? Was it thorough? Like, is it a thorough process that is fair and necessary, or did it kind of seem like you were jumping through unneeded hoops?
Those are great questions, and I think it depends on what pieces of the process. The charter application process is fantastically thorough because it's easier to run a school on paper than in real life with human beings.
Oh,
So you can't get it all ironed out on paper. You're probably not ready to start a school. So the thorough process of that application, the detail, basically you need to have it ready to roll out from your paper base. So that's really great. It ensures that what kids are getting is research-based. It's going to be effective. It's going to be a good organized system. The pieces that are trickier are just, some of the atmosphere out there of change is hard for people. A lot of people resist change, and charter schools are obviously a piece of that change. So we ran into some hurdles with facilities that were unnecessary from my perspective, and should have gone a lot quicker. But if you're committed to the community and the kids, you can push through those things and make it happen.
of course. I would imagine that you want to, create a quality school, and the process to, implementing it, like you said, if you can't have it set up on paper, I would imagine it's just going to be more difficult in actual practice.
Yes, for
I
sure.
would hope that the process is thorough, but not, blocking people from pursuing what is a community need.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it honestly really inspired us in our community development work that charter is really an avenue for the community to get involved and have some influence in the schooling process and options.
Great. On the topic of inspiration, is there anybody that inspired you to pursue this profession outside of like immediate family?
So I don't know about pursuing this profession. It wasn't really my pursuit. It was more the community saying, we need someone to do this. We appreciate the way you do school, the way you do education, and we want our kids with you more. And me saying yes. So it wasn't like, hey, I want to be a charter school leader. It's, hey, I want to serve my community, and this is what my community needs. So always worked with kids, love working with kids. Kids are inspirational to me. Just love working with humans at the age where they're developing their own identity and their own passion and their own purpose, and helping to inspire them. Hence, the term there of inspiring students to reach their full potential, and maybe even potential they don't see in themselves. As far as who inspires me along the way in my profession, charter school leaders hands down win that trophy. My colleagues out there in charter school leadership world, they are hardworking, passionate, devoted people. And they just put in so much time and energy and expertise into breaking down barriers to push towards success for more and more students. So it's really a no excuses environment out there among charter leaders. And it's really an inspirational atmosphere to be working in.
Well, it sounds that your heart is very much in the right place, and hearing what you said about seeing a need for a charter school and seeing like what the community is asking for. It reminds me, I can't remember the exact words of the phrase, but great leaders are called, not self-inserted, right? And I
Yeah.
think that you are being a very strong leader for your school and having the right mindset. And in terms of being a leader, I'd like to get some of your insight on what it is that you look for when you're hiring teachers. What are the characteristics that you value?
That is a great question. We are looking for people who have a strong work ethic and who are willing to work hard and put kids first. That's probably the number one thing. Another piece we really are looking for is experience managing a large group of kids. So, of course, if they experience in a classroom, that's the best. But even for our new teachers coming out of college or others with, limited experience, maybe changing careers, we want to know that they know what they're signing up for, because asking one adult to lead a class of 25 students is very different than babysitting two kids, right? There's expertise, there's training, and making sure they can really manage a large group of kids and keep that learning moving forward is a key skill to come in with. It's hard to coach. And so we really like people coming in with that. And then from there, it's the knowledge of the model, the alignment with the educational philosophy, and making sure that they're going to be on board with our approach to learning, that they have an understanding of the inquiry-based approach to learning, curriculum implementation, and that we are here to get academic outcomes and to make sure all students have equal opportunities in the academic realm. So, we're not just a summer camp. We love having fun with kids, but at the end of the day, they got to come out with a strong education.
Of course. So it sounds that you have a lot of value on experience, but an individual being in like the right mindset of putting the kids first is one of the leading attributes that you look for. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. And we do a lot of what people call kind of grow your own in education and teachers, where we might have someone that comes in as an aide and works on that degree and builds into the position, or transitions from a different career into the position. Because when we see someone who's the right fit and ready to serve kids, we're going to make sure they get equipped to be a teacher, and we recruit them to be a teacher.
Absolutely. How many teachers would you say you currently have, and do you try to keep a certain kind of ratio of students to teachers?
Yeah, so we're a very small school. We're just under 200 kids, and that leaves us at about a dozen to 15 teachers, depending on, who all you're counting. Of course, we have, our general classroom teachers, but we also have inclusion teachers for our students with disabilities to make sure that they can learn in the general ed classroom with the other kids and have all the same opportunities. So that's around the number that we keep and that we hire. I forget, what was your other part of that question?
If you try to keep a certain kind of ratio of students to teachers, keeping it a little smaller, it's a little easier for smaller schools, I would imagine. You have a little bit more control over that number.
Yeah, ours stays pretty low. Our kids might end up in a classroom of up to 28 kids, usually low 20s, high teens. And that's always a tricky number, because we might tell our families it's 15-1. Usually it's 15-1. It's pretty low, but that includes a variety of teachers. It might include an after-school teacher, a special education teacher. So that doesn't mean you're in a class of only 15, but it does mean we have that small of a ratio serving kids, making sure all kids are served well.
Of course. And working in the classroom, do you find that there's a particular struggle with involving the parents or building relationships with them?
Yeah, so that's a tricky piece that we actually did not struggle with before COVID and got a little harder after COVID. Because, we've always, as schools, really wanted families involved, and our school particularly had a heavy focus. All of our parents were required to do 20 volunteer hours, and then when the pandemic hit, it was like, nope, you got to stay home. And we just even get kids in school to have as few people in the building as possible. We didn't want volunteers in, and we wanted just who we needed in there. So reinvigorating that has been hard. But what we find, of course, we have parent events and formal structures for engaging parents, but it's really about lingering in conversation. and taking time and saying, you're welcome here. We want you here. We want to get to know you and building that comfort level. Another small thing we do, but that's very unique to us, is we actually put into policy that parents are not required to use titles with teachers and staff. So, when I'm talking with parents, I want them to call me Leslie. I don't need to go by Mrs. Draper or something formal like that, because what that does is that creates a power differential in the minds. And of course, schools do have some more power in the structure than families already. So we don't need to highlight that, right? And we want to make parents feel like equals, feel like collaborative partners. So, call me by first name. I'll call you by first name if you're comfortable, and let's work together to get your kid on track and where they need to be.
I really like that. I think it's very friendly for parents to come and just be on a first name basis with all the administrators and the teachers.
Yeah, I mean, we're all adults, right? There's just not a need for adults to feel like kids.
Right. We're all adults, and we all have the same goal of just educating and building up the students. So
Absolutely.
on the other side of the coin, from the parents now to the kids, what kind of efforts have you found that work to inspire students in today's world?
So this one is an easy boil it down to two things for me, and it's audience and purpose. Audience is everything in inspiring kids. If I have, I mean, even for adults, if I know what my work is for, if I know the purpose of it and who it's going to, I'm going to put my best foot forward. If it's just a worksheet that might end up on the fridge if I worked hard that day, that's less than motivating, right? I mean, I like my mom's refrigerator, that's lovely. But if instead I'm, doing something that makes real change for real people, I'm going to do well. So we really encourage all of our teachers to have an audience figured out ahead of time and work on that purpose. And it can even be parents can be the audience. One example would be we do a lot of work in one grade level on voting and voters' rights and the suffrage movement and that over the years. And, the kids will create a why vote pamphlet for their parents. And that's an immediate impact of getting more voters involved, understanding why it's important to exercise our right to vote. Even something little like that, it creates audience, it creates purpose, and kids like to give their best to that work, just like we as adults do.
Of course. I want to ask you a question a little bit about that. So I went to a charter school growing up, and
Okay.
we talked about voting rights and things of that nature. And I find that there's often a lot of day-to-day necessities that schools don't always touch on, like how to do taxes and how to register for voting, how to manage like like insurance and car insurance and things like that. Does your school, do you try to teach any of those day-to-day skills to your students? Is that something that you put into practice?
So some of those things, absolutely. It kind of depends on where it falls in the subject matter with what we call expeditions. Those are 9-week in-depth studies. So, like I said, they go deeper, not broader. So if it falls within that depth of study, they would absolutely learn those pieces. Another thing we do is we only go up through middle school, but we do a personal finance elective in middle school and try to get every student through that elective at some point during their middle school experience, so that they have some basic personal home finance skills before they ever go to high school.
Yeah, I think that's really important. There was one class my school provided that taught a little bit about those skills, but I just remember when I was 18 and filing my taxes myself for the first time, I was like, how do I do this?
Yeah, it's a lot.
So and I had the same struggles, like, when learning how to register for vote, but once you do it, you get the hang of it. But I'm really glad to hear that you do teach about voter registration, and not just, a little bit about how, but the why, and why
Yes.
it's important in order to put that right that we have into practice. So definitely some unique things and some good strategies that I believe your school is doing.
It's great. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask a little bit in regard to the history of your school. What sort of difficult or hard times have you had to go through, and how did you overcome them? I know COVID is a big one, but
COVID's the easy answer, right? It definitely threw us all in a bit of a tailspin, but we learned how much innovation can happen, how quickly, and we recreated ourselves and really, I think, did a good job of connecting with parents. The feedback was strong. So while it was hard, it was, it's a curveball we all faced. I think some more monumental challenges are always financial for charter schools. usually related to facilities, managing those facilities, keeping up with it. Charter schools are still getting fewer dollars, at least where we are. The state is working to fix that, but we're not there yet. So figuring out that funding piece and helping, you're in this weird world of, you're a public school, you receive public funds, but you're not fully funded. So you're requiring to supplement that with grants and private donors and things like that. And helping the private world understand that shortage of like, well, you get these public funds, why would you need us? And really helping everyone understand that story and work together to make sure our kids get access to resources, and especially in a school like ours who are serving underserved kids, under-resourced kids, we need to make sure they are getting more resources, not fewer resources. The other big challenge I would say is defining success, defining growth. We are very committed to taking a holistic view to education, a multicultural view to education. And a lot of the quote unquote achievement gaps may just be faulty assessment measurements, culturally biased approaches of like what counts as achievement, what counts as growth. So making sure that we honor all cultural achievement, making sure that we honor different modalities, while also not dropping rigor and not saying, well, it's that we're lowering standards. No, we want to raise those standards. We want complex work coming out of kids. We just don't want to define their capacity to contribute to a better society by one test created by one dominant group.
Right. That can definitely be a difficult balance, trying to cater to everyone's uniqueness and everyone's strengths while also, maintaining the same level of rigor. So it's definitely indicative of your, I guess, of your abilities to be aware of that and making sure that that is balanced out. Now, if you were to be able to go back in time, is there anything that you would have done differently?
That's a hard one for me because I don't tend to approach life that way. I'm very much one of our design principles that we embrace as we work with the EL Education Network of schools is success and failure. And we are not a failure is not an option environment. We're a success and failure environment where we believe that embracing failure as part of the learning process is huge to success, to achievement. A lot of the people that don't get as far in life are only because they're afraid to fail and try something and fail at it. So I guess I probably wouldn't do much differently in life or in the school or any of it, because I think that's how we learn, is that we have to try things, we have to learn as we go, and hands-on learning is the best way to do that. So I always have trouble with that one.
Right. It's one of those moments where you look at a mistake and you think, I wish I wouldn't have made that mistake, but you can learn from your mistakes. And what a previous guest on this podcast actually told me once, that you want to try and make your mistakes as quickly as possible. Just
That's a good
out of
one.
the way. Yeah, just get them out of the way, get over it, because the sooner that's done, the sooner you'll grow.
Yeah, I mean, not to say there haven't been mistakes or missteps or failures, but you grow stronger, you learn from them, and you don't dwell on the what ifs,
Yeah. And what kind of tips or words of advice would you have for someone that's looking at stepping into a leadership position, or maybe founding their own charter school? Like what bits of advice would you give them?
Leadership is harder than it looks. I think we've experienced in our own journey as a school that no matter how much we try to be transparent in the work of leadership, people underestimate the workload that charter school leaders carry. It's a huge workload. You have to have a high level of stamina. So I just think really taking account for how bad you want it, how much you want that life. It's a different life. I don't think people quite understand how different it is. There's the pressure, there's the constant, you can't keep everyone happy. That's a surefire way to fail, right? Because that's just not possible. So I've seen people step up into charter school leadership that thought they wanted it, and by the end of a year, we're like, this isn't worth it to me. I don't care enough to be in this position for the taxation it's taking on me. So I think being aware of yourself and how much you really want to put in those types of hours, take on that type of stress. Some of us are just wired for it. I'm the type of person, if I step out of a role like this, I'll fill it with something else anyway. So if you're not naturally a goer, you'll burn out real fast.
Right. In my experience with working with charter school administrators and just staff members in general, it seems like each team member has to wear multiple different kind of
For
hats.
sure, for
Was
sure.
was there any hat that you were surprised about where you stepped into this position, you're like, I didn't know I was gonna have to do that. Was there any kind of like surprise role like that for you?
Oh, I don't know. That's hard to think of off the top of my head. I feel like I say that a lot though, so it's funny that I can't think of an answer. I will often say to staff, either on something that comes out of my mouth or something I'm doing, like all on the list of things you didn't know you would do as a charter school leader. I think the list is pretty long, but my leadership philosophy is never to ask anyone else to do something you're not willing to do. So you'll find me taking out the trash once in a while, like I don't think that's the best use of a leader's time to take out the trash every day, right? That's why we hire other people for different roles. But you can't ask people to take out the trash if you won't take it out yourself once in a while. So, I'll do most anything in our organization. I like to learn most of the processes. That way, if there's a gap in staffing, I've got it covered. But yes, that's a long list. I wish I could think of more examples of when I say that. I feel like you need my staff on the call for that one because I really do say that a lot.
Well, I imagine like needs come very organically and like, see a need, fill a need. And I like how you said that as a leader, how can you ask others to do it if you wouldn't do it yourself? And this was actually a lesson that I learned pretty early on. While I was in college, I was working at a sporting goods store. And a brief tangent here, I promise. But the sporting goods store, it was successful, had multiple locations, and
Yeah.
it was two brothers that started it. And I just remembered the first day when the store first opened, and I was one of the first hires. After, they did like the team motivational speak, and everyone would like broke up and went and did the different things. I saw the older brother. He was out in front of the store, sweeping out the sidewalk, and then he spent most of the day cleaning the windows, just like,
Yeah.
menial task. And I was like, he could have asked me to do that, but he did it.
Got it
And
done.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's just like that, definitely speaks volumes when the leaders are willing to do, the day-to-day tasks, even if it might not be something that was initially associated with the job.
Yeah.
So
And it motivates everyone to take on that spirit of what's the need, I'll fill it.
yeah, and it, we're a team, no
That's
job is beneath any of us.
right.
Um, okay, so this next question, I feel like I could do an entire episode on its own, but I do think it's something important to think about. And in the beginning, I asked you if the process of starting a charter school was, fair and as easy as it should be, but also, thorough and, making sure that everything was in its place. But is there anything that you would like to see happen within the local, state, or federal level of government that would maybe give more freedom or more capabilities for charter schools?
Yeah, I think two things for me. One is funding. Equal access to funding matters. We all know all the data and statistics on poverty and how it impacts kids. We can drive by schools and see the income level of the district based on how great their facilities look. And that is just something we've got to fix for kids' sake. That and transportation, both of those, having those equally funded in a very specific structure. However they want to do that, as long as it's fair to all kids wherever they, choose to go for public schooling. The other piece I would say is about misinformation and understanding and just making sure that people's political views on charters don't impact what information they're putting out there. We've experienced a good bit of misinformation that a lot of families and voters really do not understand what a charter school is, how it works. And a lot of that's coming from the top where it's getting batched in with other privatized initiatives or not clearly explained how it is open to all students, how it's accountable for various things. And I think we really need to have a lot more clarity and continuity on communication coming out of all levels of government, regardless of political perspective on the matter.
Of course, yeah. I do think that there is a bit of misunderstanding sometimes with what charter schools are, how they actually operate. And it is a pity to see that. I went to a K through 12 charter school growing up, and yeah, had a wonderful experience. So helping people understand what it is that charter schools do and what they're about. And most of them are ran by people like yourself that just see a need and have a desire to just educate children. So I think those are very wonderful and meaningful answers to that. In terms of your current standing, I'd like to know what projects or goals are in the near future for your school.
Yeah, our next project goal is to, well, I guess there's two buckets. There's the facilities bucket that facilitates all of this, hence the word and the root word. And then there's the programming itself, the academic programming. So, facilities is where we do the work. It inspires the work. It speaks and affirms dignity, or it doesn't. So our next big project is really creating a strategic plan. We purchased an older school building and we've been working to catch it up, but that is a long-term process. And we really want to get a multi-year plan. Charter legislation just expanded charters in Indiana that the charter contracts can be longer. And that really empowers us with lending and with other things to have a longer charter contract. So we want to make, a multi-year long-range plan for facilities, bringing, up to be more modernized and really just a beautiful place to do school. So that's project number one. The other project, I guess also number one, they're kind of equal importance, is really bringing back, I don't know, bringing back is the right term, just figuring out a post-COVID world with serving students well, academics, socially. It's just a different experience post-pandemic. It's hard to describe unless you were in pre and post. But there's a lot of academic need. There's a lot of social learning need, and really figuring out how to get kids performing at a competitive level, at a level that we need for the workplace beyond schools, that kids are ready for the careers that are waiting for them. That is the other thing we're tackling is how to do that well.
Gotcha. And I would imagine it's a learning process, you kind of learn as you go.
Yes.
So the next two questions I have are kind of fun ones. These are going to be I would imagine, a little easier to answer. But number one, if you were given a magic wand, you had one wish, one-time use that you could do anything for your school, what would be your pick?
Oh, I would in a heartbeat get the facilities caught up and exactly where we want it, and then it's just managing it. That would free up so much money to send to the classroom and teachers and get that educational piece going stronger. So if I had a magic wand to just transform, our current space and grounds are wonderful, so I wouldn't change it, just to get that pixie dust on it and make it into an amazing place. Would love to do that for free or whatever money that magic wand pours out.
Sure. Having everything just taken care of that's large will definitely allow you to focus on like the finer details and
Yes.
Be fair to the teachers and put the time and energy into the kids. So I definitely think that is a wholesome answer for sure. The next question that I have is, if you had your own personal billboard, which you might already, let's say you had one that was at the busiest highway in the busiest part of town, what would your one-time message to the community be? Like, if someone just takes a passing glance, what's the impression you want to put on the community?
So is this a school billboard or a me billboard?
It's a school billboard.
Okay, I feel like that would be different. Yeah, so our school billboard is always pretty consistent and we love it, and it's think outside the desk. That's our tagline. And if you were to explain our school in a phrase, it really matches. We are outside the desk thinkers. It's part of our educational model to get kids doing field studies in the real world. It's also just part of who we are, and really deeply embedded in our culture as an organization, that we're questioners, we're thinkers, and we don't just accept the status quo. We kind of have an aversion to it.
Yeah, it also brings to me like a play on the think outside the dots, or think outside the box phrase that people commonly know, but it kind of like delves into that, puts an added twist on it. I really like that. I think that's very, very clever.
Yeah, it's a fun one.
For sure. Well, Leslie, we're nearing the end of our time, but I'd like to give you an opportunity if there's any other experiences or funny stories that you'd like to share with us today.
I don't have a lot more. I've appreciated talking with you, appreciate you investing in charter schools. And I think, yeah, it's just really a neat world out there in the charter world. We're not all on the same page. One of the foundational pieces of charters is autonomy and innovation. And the charter world being built on those two things creates a lot of diversity within the charter world. And just to see the community of leaders and staff that work together to better kids, however, we've explored whatever that innovative process is, whatever our values are within our communities and organizations, to leverage that to advocate for kids, to work for kids. It's really been a great experience. It's a great place to have kids. My kids went to my school. So I just would say thanks to you guys for supporting the charter world. It's a great space to be in.
We do what we can. We really believe in charter schools and the public access to education that they provide. And after getting to know you a little better and hearing about your experiences and what you've done with your school, I truly believe your school is lucky to have you, and that your community is benefiting greatly from the work that you're doing. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. And to all of our viewers, thank you for tuning in with this episode. We hope to see you next time, and I wish you all a great day. Thank you.